When police in San Antonio, Texas, responded to a welfare check at a high-end apartment complex, they encountered an unlikely and tragic scene. A single bullet hole shot through the front door of an apartment unit. The victim, 34-year-old Martell DeRouen, dead inside from a single gunshot to the head. The state of the apartment told the story of a heated argument, but the door was deadbolted from the inside. The shot clearly made from outside the door. Recollections of neighbors, doorbell camera footage, and a bizarre 911 call would eventually lead to the shooter, and a conclusion that few would have predicted. On Tuesday, the 26th of January, 2021, San Antonio police were called out to the Towers off of La Cantera Parkway, a newly built luxury apartment complex. The SAPD had been contacted by the family of 34-year-old Martell DeRouen to conduct a welfare check. Martell lived alone in a new one-bedroom unit in the complex. He had been uncharacteristically out of contact and unreachable for days. When police arrived, they found Martell's vehicle parked in the building's garage. There was every reason to believe that he was at home, but he was not responding. A maintenance team was eventually called to force open his apartment door. It had been locked and deadbolted from the inside. While crews worked to force their way inside, they noticed a hole in the door near to the peephole and knocker. This small hole was unmistakable. It had been made from a bullet. When the team managed to push their way inside, they found Martell just on the other side of the door, deceased and collapsed to the floor. He had sustained a single gunshot to the head. Police believed they were at the scene of a homicide. As word spread of the death to family and friends, the shock and grief felt by the DeRouen family was almost palpable. Many had difficulty processing the murder. They thought there must have been some kind of mistake. Martell was not a man with enemies. Smart, capable, and successful, Martell was a military veteran after serving 6 years in the Air Force. He had been a decorated sergeant in Air Force intelligence. Martell's role had seen him working with some of the military's most sensitive and confidential intelligence. Since leaving the service, he had pursued a career in music. As a rapper, he went by the name Cardone and had recently signed with the Sony-affiliated music label, The Orchard. He was active in the music scene across San Antonio and often worked as a sound engineer, helping to record music for other up-and-coming talent out of his own studio. Friends and colleagues knew him to be a bit of a rarity, a successful rapper that was nonetheless always very humble. Martell was a cousin of Beyoncé's through his grandmother, Agnes DeRouen. Yet despite striving for years to hit it big in the music industry, he never name-dropped.
Something he would even mention to people. We just have to put it in his bios because it's worthy to put in there, but he doesn't like stuff like that.
When Martell was a teenager, he met the woman that would become his future wife, Joya. The two reconnected after both graduating high school and would marry in 2007. By the time of his death, the couple had been formally separated for roughly 2 years, living in separate apartments only a few miles away and renting out the house that they had owned together. Nonetheless, the two remained cordial. They spent time together every week. Joya had driven to the Towers apartments on the morning that Martell was found. After speaking with his parents, she had called, texted, and emailed with no response. So she drove over to check up on him. The last time anyone had spoken with Martell was 4 nights earlier on January 22nd. The medical examination and investigation unfortunately aligned with this timeline. Martell had been shot through his door 3 days prior. Further inside the apartment, police began piecing together the story of Martell's last night. Broken dishes shattered into pieces covered the kitchen floor. In the bedroom, the sheets had been torn off of the mattress and had become twisted into a pile. Next to the sheets was a do-rag and a broken acrylic nail. One perhaps pulled off of the head and the other broken from a finger during a struggle. There were also signs of a physical altercation elsewhere. The bed frame had come apart. The headboard was torn from the rest of the frame. A basket that appeared to have been knocked to the floor held a cartridge with bullets, but no gun. In the closet, police found a pistol case, the one provided by the manufacturer. When they looked inside, the pistol was missing. The neighbor living directly below Martell's apartment unit reported overhearing a loud and violent argument on the night of the 22nd. She took a short video of her ceiling, which recorded some of the yelling and items breaking. The noise was loud enough to permeate through the floor and into her home. This neighbor did not, however, place a call to the police, but someone else did. Reviewing emergency calls from the night of Martell's death, investigators uncovered a call from a woman in the tower apartments, locked out of her unit and concerned about a hole in the door. The woman was long gone by the time the officers responded to the building. But on the phone call, she had given a name: Sasha DeRouen, Martell's estranged wife.
San Antonio 911, this is Brett. Do you need police, fire, or EMS?
I need police now.
What address?
It's 16735 O'Connor Road. Not O'Connor, Rocking Terrace Parkway.
16735?
Yes.
Okay, and this is the tower?
Yes.
Okay, and your name?
My name is Sasha Skare.
Okay, what's going on?
I'm trying to get in my apartment, but I'm not able to get in. I'm just not able to get in, and I think my husband is injured.
Your husband's hurt?
Yes.
Do you hear him?
No, he's not responding, and I called him. He's just not responding. And there's a hole in his door, and I don't know what's going on, honestly.
There's a hole in the door?
Yes.
Okay, where are you now?
I'm at the same address.
Are you outside the apartment, or where are you?
I'm outside the door, and I cannot get in.
And you don't have a key?
No, ma'am, I don't.
Do you live there?
Yes, I do.
And what is your name?
My name is Sasha DeRouen.
Spell the first name?
Joya, Gaoia.
And your husband's name?
Martell
Last name?
DeRouen, DeRoun.
All right, and it's apartment 1605?
Yes.
All right, we'll get an officer over there.
On the night of the shooting in the unit across the hallway, new resident Caroline was waiting on DoorDash to deliver her dinner for the evening. Mistaking the noise of knocking on a door from the hallway as her food delivery, Caroline opened the door. Instead of her food, she encountered a woman in her 20s, wearing a long green sundress, banging on the door to the unit across the hall. Caroline was asked by police at the scene to take a look at the onlookers outside of the building, where Martell's wife, Joya, in shock and confusion, waited for more information. Was that the woman that she saw banging on Martell's door on the night that he died? No, Caroline said. Sasha DeRouen was definitely not the woman that she saw that night. Caroline's recollection was supported when investigators sourced what would prove to be the pivotal piece of evidence: a Ring doorbell camera from an apartment just down the hall from Martell's. Facing into the hallway, the camera captured a young woman around 9 p.m. on January 22nd. The woman wore no shoes. She was dressed in a green sundress. In one hand, she carried a cell phone. In her right hand, a pistol. Looking beyond the destruction inside of the apartment, investigators found further indications of the second person, the mystery woman who had been with Martell on the night of his murder. By the window was an easel and partially completed painting, which sat abandoned. A pair of shoes, likely women's, sat on the floor just in front, surrounded by more painting supplies. 2 glasses of Hennessy, a type of brandy, were out as well. These drinks left unfinished. A large purse sat on a chair next to the broken bed, an iPad on a footstool. Then, finally, they located 2 debit cards, both with the same name on them: Sasha Skare. "21-year-old Sasha Skare was an aspiring songwriter and vocalist. She lived primarily in Austin with her mother and freelanced as a graphic designer, making corporate logos and flyers. According to Joya, Martell had met Sasha at the shoot for one of his music videos years earlier in 2016. At the time, 17-year-old Sasha was doing some modeling and trying to launch her own music career. He offered to help her out. Years later, after his separation, the two became romantically involved. But in the aftermath of his death, Sasha was nowhere to be found. Her photo was distributed in the media. Friends posted to her Instagram account, "Turn yourself in." This was not the first time that Sasha Skare had been sought by law enforcement. In December 2019, the Austin Police Department responded to the call of a shooting on North Lamar Boulevard at just past 1 a.m. At the scene, officers met then 20-year-old Sasha Skare, who told them she and her boyfriend went to meet someone to buy marijuana. He had been shot in the chest. Police found her boyfriend, Andrew Bass, in the back seat of a car parked at Jeff's auto body shop. Emergency medics performed CPR, but he was declared dead at the scene. In an interview with police, Sasha said she and Andrew went to a grocery store to meet someone and make their purchase. She told them she parked the car and Andrew walked off to make the deal. Then, she claimed that she heard gunshots soon after. She ran after Andrew to find him wrestling with another man holding a gun. Police reported that Sasha was very adamant that her boyfriend was the one who set up the meeting. But investigators later found messages on the man's phone between him and Sasha setting up all of the details. They said it was clear from the messages that the two knew each other, and that Sasha set up the meeting with the intention of robbing the man. When she and her boyfriend attempted to do so, he was killed and the other man seriously injured. Sasha had run off with the gun. She faced a charge of aggravated robbery with a deadly weapon and was released on bond. In March 2020, 3 people, including Sasha Skare, were severely burned when a propane tank exploded inside of a residential building. The explosion happened after a 200-pound propane tank linked to a gas line developed a fracture and began leaking gas into a nearby home. The scars on Sasha's face had healed by the winter of 2021. In February, after word spread of Martell's murder, she turned herself in to San Antonio police. 2 years later, Sasha Skare stood trial for first-degree murder. The prosecution argued that Sasha, after arguing with Martell inside the apartment, had left with his gun. She later returned to the door angry, carrying the weapon as shown in the doorbell footage. The bullet hole in the door was made next to the peephole. They argued that she had fired with intent, targeting a location on the other side of the door where she knew Martell to be standing.
Throughout our trial, we're going to present these various facts to you. And at the end of the trial, you're going to learn that, number one, there's a physical confrontation in there by the evidence that we see, broken items. Number two, undisputed, Caroline saw a young African-American woman Friday night banging on the door, trying to get in. You're going to learn, number three, that Martell clearly locked everybody out of that apartment. He clearly wanted no one in there. You're going to learn, number four, that a bullet, undisputed, a bullet went through the door, near the keyhole, into his head. And the most, probably in my mind, most compelling part, number five, a video recording of the defendant walking with a semi-automatic 9mm down the hallway on a cell phone. And when you put these items together, we're going to ask you to find the defendant guilty of murder.
After firing the shot, the state argued that she must have known that she hit him, prompting her to place a call to 911. On this call, she pretended to be his wife, Joya, in an attempt to conceal her own identity. Joya DeRouen testified that she recognized Sasha's voice on the 911 recording. She also explained that there were multiple pieces of information offered on the call that did not make sense. Sasha initially gave an incorrect address to the operator, accidentally offering the street where she used to live instead of the tower's apartments. She also provided an incorrect phone number, seemingly unaware that 911 could trace back the number that was used.
Can you describe to us what information the defendant got incorrect or what misinformation the defendant provided to 911?
Well, number one, she pronounced my name wrong. My last name is not DeRouen, it's DeRouen. She spelled it wrong. My first name, you couldn't tell whether she was going to spell it with a G or a J. It's with a J. And then Martell was not 28, he was 34. Just amongst a couple of other things that, were in the tape, it just was all over the place. It wasn't the correct information at all.
Sasha's defense team argued that the altercation with Martell from earlier in the night left Sasha fearful for her life. When she returned to the doorway, it was because she felt that she needed to collect her belongings from inside the apartment in order to leave. Shoeless, with her purse and bank cards inside, Sasha banged on the door, holding the gun that she had taken for her own protection. Her defense team withheld their opening statement until the prosecution had finished presenting its case. They called a single witness in her defense to explain what they claimed transpired that night, leading to Martell's death. That witness was Sasha Skare.
You've heard a lot of evidence before you. You've heard the what, you put the when, the where. Now you're going to hear about the why. I want you to pay attention during the state's case, to the defense's case in chief. You're going to hear from Ms. Sasha Skare herself, and you're going to hear a version of events that happened that night. We're going to leave it up to you to make that decision. And ultimately, at the end, we believe you will return the only verdict that makes sense, which is not guilty as to murder.
Sasha told the jury that she met Martell years earlier. He had presented himself to her at that time as a 24-year-old rapper, though he must have been at least 30 years old. Years later, the two reconnected as friends, becoming romantically involved in the 6 to 8 months before his death. Sasha did not drive. 2 to 3 times a week, Martell would collect her from her mother's home in Austin and drive her back to his apartment in San Antonio. This is what had occurred earlier on January 22nd. At the apartment, Sasha began a painting, which was intended for the promotion of Martell's performance, scheduled for that coming weekend. The rapper worked on his music nearby before the two settled down for dinner and a movie. Following dinner, Sasha took a call from a photographer who she was looking to work with to further her own career ambitions. She used the iPad to FaceTime in the kitchen. All the while, Martell sat on the couch within earshot of the discussion. Sasha claimed that this phone call triggered the argument that followed. She characterized Martell as jealous and angry. The argument turned physical. The incident inside the apartment came to an end when Sasha claimed to have leapt over the kitchen counter, avoiding the broken dishes on the one side as she was barefoot, and ran from the unit, carrying only her cell phone and the gun.
He was upset because he felt like I was on the phone with another man.
Why did you grab the weapon?
I grabbed it to tell him, after I grabbed it, I told him, don't touch me.
Okay. Were you in fear for your life at that point?
Yes, I was. I started backing up out of the bedroom. When I backed up out of the bedroom, he started following me. I started grabbing dishes out of the cabinets and throwing it in between us.
Sasha stood in court to demonstrate for jurors what she said occurred just after she was captured by the doorbell camera. Outside the doorway, she banged on the door to get Martell's attention. Her explanation for how the gun was fired offered little for her defense.
How exactly was the gun discharged?
As I was knocking on the door, I just threw the gun up and I just shot.
It gun went off?
Yes.
Okay. Ms. Skare, when you fired that shot, did you know Martell was behind that door?
No, sir, I didn't.
Did you mean to hurt Martell?
Not at all.
Tell the jury, what was your intent when that gun fired?
I guess my intent was just to get his attention.
The prosecution did not argue that the altercation that caused so much damage inside had not taken place, nor that Sasha had not been injured as a result. On cross-examination, they did question whether the argument had in fact left her in fear for her life. Sasha's actions after the fact suggested otherwise. First, she knocked on other neighbors' doors, but did not request help. Instead, she borrowed a cell phone charger. When her cell phone had gained a partial charge from the stairwell in the building, Sasha did call 911, but not for her own safety. The state argued that she made the call because she knew that the bullet struck Martell. They also argued that she could not have been scared for her life, or she never would have chosen to return to the apartment with the gun. She would have simply waited for a friend to pick her up from the building, which they eventually did.
You make a call to 911, correct?
That was one of the calls that I made, yes.
Yes. Now, it's your testimony that you went back to the apartment and started banging on the door again, correct?
Yes.
And you had the gun with you?
Yes.
So it is your testimony that you're so scared to death while you're in the apartment, you leave with a gun, and you come back to the same place where you're afraid, correct? Mm-hmm. Is that your testimony?
Yes, sir.
So instead of calling 911 and saying, hey, I've just been assaulted, I've just been choked, you didn't do that, correct?
No, sir, I didn't.
You had a gun in your hand and you could have found a safe place to remain and call police, correct?
Yes, sir.
Did you do that?
No, sir, I didn't.
The state pressured Sasha to provide an explanation as to why she had raised the gun in her hand at all, if her intent was not to fire it.
You're raising the gun. And why are you raising the gun?
I guess because at the time I just went mad. I just went insane.
Why are you raising the gun? For what function? For what reason are you raising the gun?
I wouldn't necessarily say to shoot it because...
Then why?
There would be no other answer, but
the other answer is that you're angry, decided to shoot at him. That would be another reason why you raised the gun.
I didn't decide to shoot at him though.
After Sasha left the building, she told the jury that she disposed of the weapon in a nearby dumpster because she did not want to be carrying it around. 2 days after the shooting, she took photos of her black eye and scratches to document the injuries that she said she sustained that night. In closing arguments, the prosecution and defense rehashed the details of Sasha's story, as well as the indisputable facts, and interpreted them back to the jury. In the state's interpretation, Sasha knew that Martell was on the other side of the door when she fired. He must have been speaking to her, or more likely, telling her to leave. The defense suggested that Martell must have thought that the noise of the pistol banging on the door was the police, and so he approached the peephole to take a look in complete silence. Sasha had no idea that he was standing there.
No dispute that she broke and threw things onto the ground. After he kicks her out and she's banging on the door, do you think he's going to tiptoe quietly to the door without saying a word? Or what is more likely, that he's going to be angry as well and tell her, go away, leave me alone, get away? All of a sudden, he's just going to tiptoe and not say anything? No. He was responding through the door, and she shot him through the door. Not only did she shoot him through the door, she shot him through the middle of the door, knowing he's right behind her.
Banging on the door, he's silent. So she's banging with that gun. She wants to get his attention and say, open the door, I need my stuff. Steps back, pulls the gun up, and the gun goes off as she's pulling it up. And I'm not saying goes off accidentally. She admits to pulling the trigger. She's owning it. She stood in the light and said it. She didn't accidentally discharge it as it's coming up. She pulled it up and fired. Unfortunately, I speculate Martell, looking to see if it's the police, leans down to a really low peephole, and this horrific thing happens. Martell gets shot straight in the head and falls dead to the floor.
The jury took 2 hours to return a guilty verdict.
We, the jury, find the defendant Sasha Skare guilty of the offense of murder as charged in the indictment, signed the foreperson of the grand jury.
The foundation of Sasha's defense was her own testimony, and the jury obviously did not find it believable. Following the verdict, the same jury deliberated for 4.5 hours to determine Sasha's sentence. She faced a maximum term of life in prison. She was given 55 years. 1 week before Sasha's trial commenced, she was offered a plea deal that would have sentenced her to 20 years in prison. Under the jury's longer punishment, she will be eligible for parole in 2048.
So fix your sheets, if you have any, because you've made your bed and now it's time to lay in it.
Martell DeRouen is remembered as a loving family man, a decorated Air Force veteran, and talented musician. And that was the tragic case of Martell DeRouen and Sasha Skare. Thanks for joining me once again.